Once the golden boy of an entire global football fan base, loved across the nation as a saint.
He's written to every MP for support after helping to raise £20 million for food for low-income families during the lockdown.
An exciting winger who had all of the makings to be one of England's greatest ever players. Just 2 years later, outcast by his club.
Like you say, he's not playing with a smile on his face. At times it looks like he doesn't want to be there.
Brandished by pundits as lazy and entitled, and a shadow of his former self. This is the rise and fall of Marcus Rashford. February 25th, 2016, a date now etched in Manchester United folklore. An 18-year-old Marcus Rashford, thrust into the spotlight due to an injury crisis, scores twice on his senior debut. The Old Trafford faithful erupted, sensing that they were witnessing the birth of their next homegrown hero. Rashford's journey to that magical night began on the streets of Manchester, kicking a ball around with his brothers. He dreamed of one day wearing the famous red shirt, and at just 7 years old, he joined United's youth academy, his raw talent catching the eye of scouts. But the path from academy prospect to first-team star is one that many failed to complete. For every Marcus Rashford, countless others fell by the wayside, unable to cope with the immense pressure. Manchester United, a global football giant, demands excellence from the moment a player steps onto the training pitch. The question was, would he be one of the many or one of the few? Rashford, however, seemed unfazed by the weight of expectation. He progressed rapidly through the youth ranks, his blistering pace and clinical finishing setting him apart, traits that he carried on far into his first-team career. Coaches spoke in hushed tones about the special talent that they had on their hands, scared that if they talked too much, someone else would come in and poach the diamond they'd stumbled across. United Academy coach Paul McGuinness, who had been there for over a decade, said, "The talent was obvious. There are late developers, but quite often, if you're going to be the best, you are the best at 8. He was the best at 8. He had grown up in an environment that forced him to push hard and be gritty, and have to work for anything that he wanted in life. Nothing was given. And it turned out that with that mindset, he was able to become one of the few. He made it into the first team, and his breakthrough season was nothing short of spectacular. After that debut brace, Rashford continued to light up Old Trafford. He scored twice against Arsenal in his Premier League debut, becoming the third youngest scorer in the club's league history. His direct running, clever movement and ice-cold composure in front of goal drew comparisons to United legends of the past. As the 2016-17 season approached, anticipation built. After all, he was still just a kid. But he was a kid who scored 12 goals in 31 appearances in his debut season. He was more than just an exciting prospect. He was delivering goals against some of the biggest teams in England already. Better yet, he now had the tutelage of new coach Jose Mourinho. With this came a wealth of knowledge from a legendary coach. With the signing of Zlatan, he sometimes had to settle for a place on the bench, but that only drove him to prove himself even more. Could this teenage sensation maintain his form? Would he become a victim of second season syndrome? Rashford answered his critics emphatically, with another 10-plus goal campaign. This was still just at 18-19. Was this another Ryan Giggs, or maybe even better? He established himself as a key player for Man United, his versatility allowing him to operate across the front line. His pace terrified defenders, his work rate endeared him to the fans, and his crucial goals in big matches proved that he was no flash in the pan. He was the homegrown boy who happened to be a superstar. There was no one better for the United fan base to root for than one of their own. That work rate helped United to the double, an EFL Cup and a Europa League win. He now had a taste for silverware, and he was being held on a pedestal by the Man United faithful. It seemed like nothing could stop him. England, of course, soon came calling. Rashford made his international debut in May of 2016, becoming the youngest English player to score on his international debut. He was truly living the dream, representing both his boyhood club and his country at the highest level. By the end of the 2018-19 season, he'd cemented himself as one of Europe's brightest young talents. He'd scored over 40 goals for United, played in a World Cup, and became a fan favourite at Old Trafford. The future looked blindingly bright for Manchester's newest golden boy. But as we now know, football has a way of humbling even the most promising stars. While Rashford's star continued to rise on the pitch, an unexpected challenge would thrust him into a battle far beyond the football field.
I urge you, at this moment of national emergency, to stay at home.
In March 2022, as the UK plunged into COVID lockdown, Rashford partnered with the charity FareShare to deliver meals to children who suddenly found themselves without free school meals. This wasn't just a publicity stunt for the young striker, it was deeply personal. Growing up in Wythenshawe, Rashford had first-hand experience of food poverty. He knew the gnawing feeling of an empty stomach. Now, with his platform, he was determined to make a difference. His campaign had raised over £20 million, providing more than 4 million meals to children across the nation. On June 15, 2020, he penned an open letter to the UK government, urging them to extend free school meals throughout the summer holidays. It was a bold move, and not everyone was impressed, even for such a great cause. Critics accused him of overstepping his bounds, questioning whether a young athlete had any business meddling in politics, and also whether this new ambition would draw his focus away from football. Undeterred, he pressed on. The pressure mounted, and in a stunning turn of events, the British government reversed its position. Free school meals would be extended, a decision directly attributed to Rashford's campaign. Prime Minister Boris Johnson even admitted that Rashford had been more effective in advocating for the cause than the leader of the opposition party. He established a child food poverty task force in September of 2020. He brought together food shops, manufacturers, charities, and delivery companies to tackle the issue on a broader scale. His efforts earned him numerous accolades, including the prestigious FIFA Foundation Award and an MBE for his services to vulnerable children. At this point, he had become more than just a footballer. He was now a national hero, not just loved by Man United, but by a country. How quickly that would change. As he stepped up to take a penalty in the Euro 2020 final, I don't think anyone realised the crushing weight that was about to descend on his young shoulders. The eyes of an entire nation were fixed on him. In a moment that would define his career, Rashford's shot struck the post. The ball ricocheted away, and with it, England's chances of ending 55 years of hurt. Months earlier, a national hero, golden boy, and role model. But with one kick of a football, that was very quickly forgotten. He'd been brought on specifically for this moment, a testament to his reputation as a cool-headed finisher, but even the iciest veins can freeze. What followed was a dark chapter in English football history. Within minutes of the final whistle, Rashford's social media accounts were flooded with racial abuse. A mural of the Man United star in his hometown was defaced. The ugly underbelly of football fandom had reared its head, exposing the systemic racism still plaguing the beautiful game. The psychological impact of such a public failure, compounded by racist abuse, can be devastating. Sports psychologists often speak about the mental toll of high-pressure situations, but few athletes face this level of scrutiny as Rashford endured. The young forward who had once seemed invincible now appeared vulnerable and shaken. The same parents who were once donning him as a hero were likely the same that were abusing him on social media. In the weeks that followed, Rashford showed remarkable resilience. He thanked fans for their support and vowed to come back stronger. But as the new season began, it became clear that the events of that summer had really taken their toll. His form dipped, and his confidence wavered. The effortless brilliance that once had defined his play seemed to have deserted him. The spotlight that had once illustrated his brilliance now casted harsh shadows on every aspect of his life. Every move, both on and off the pitch, became fodder for tabloids and social media. The young man who had been hailed as a hero for his charity work now found himself seemingly under fire every single day. One incident that drew particular hatred occurred after a 3-0 defeat to Manchester City. Rashford, perhaps seeking solace in celebration, hosted a birthday party. The timing couldn't have been worse. manager Erik ten Hag deemed the behaviour unacceptable, emphasising that it fell short of the standards expected at Manchester United. The criticism was swift and harsh, with many questioning Rashford's commitment to the club. How could you be partying after you just lost 3-0 to your fierce rivals? But sadly, this wasn't an isolated incident. In December 2022, Rashford's late arrival to a team meeting resulted in him being benched for a match against Wolves. Though he later scored the winning goal as a substitute, the damage to his reputation was done. Pundits like Alan Shearer didn't hold back, vocally criticising Rashford's performance and attitude. Shearer even emphasised that such criticism was fair, given his status and contract at Manchester United, and this carried on for many years into the future until the present day. But even so, the 2022-23 season was exactly what Manchester United fans wanted to see. 30 goals in a single season, his highest tally in his career so far, and perhaps a glimpse of what he was truly capable of. Now reportedly worth over £100 million, it seemed that he was once again at the peak of his play. But even with this impressive record, he was still targeted and put under a microscope 24/7. Perhaps this is another reason why he seemingly lost the love for the game in the following years. If you're scoring 30 goals for your club, and yet your supporters still find any way to criticise you, would you want to keep performing for them? I think not. Even Rashford's attempts to unwind drew fire, with Gary Neville criticising his decision to attend a glitzy trip to the US during an international break, questioning the appropriateness of such behaviour given the team's current struggles. The constant criticism took its toll, leaving Rashford to express his frustration, labelling the scrutiny as abuse and declaring enough is enough. He highlighted the disproportionate nature of the criticism he faced compared to other players, revealing the mental strain of life under the microscope. His body language and work rate on the pitch were called into question, with Jamie Carragher even comparing him unfavourably to teammate Anthony Martial, known for being lazy. Fans grew increasingly frustrated, interpreting actions like throwing his gloves on the ground as signs of disrespect and unprofessionalism. The golden boy of Manchester United now found himself at a crossroads. Would he double down and prove everyone wrong? It was clear that he still had the ability, we'd seen it with our own eyes, and he was still only 27 years old. Or were the previous years of abuse and scrutiny enough to put him off the sport for good? Just months after signing a £325,000 a week contract, Rashford's performances took a nosedive. The 23-24 season began with high expectations. Fresh off the campaign where he netted 30 goals in all competitions, fans and pundits alike were eagerly anticipating another stellar year. But as the weeks ticked by, it became painfully clear that it wasn't the same. Rashford's goal-scoring touch seemed to have deserted him overnight. His average goals per 90 minutes plummeted from an impressive 0.63 in the previous season to a meagre 0.2. Gone was the confident swagger of a player in his prime, replaced by slumped shoulders and a dejected demeanour. He had truly lost his mojo. He wasn't running at players like he used to, and it was both sad and frustrating to see. 8 goals in a season was a far cry from the 30 that he scored in the previous year. Similarly with the next year, where he scored just 7 goals once again. The now notorious nightclub incident in Belfast, where Rashford missed training due to a reported illness, only to be spotted partying, drew sharp criticism from Erik ten Hag and, as you can imagine, the Man United fanbase as well. It was a moment that seemed to epitomise the growing concerns about Rashford's focus and commitment. If you're being paid £325,000, your focus should be on your football, rather than making excuses to play less of it. Former United midfielder Nicky Butt didn't mince words, stating that Rashford looked unhappy and wasn't working hard enough. As the season wore on, Rashford found himself increasingly relegated to the bench. But then a new manager was brought in the form of Ruben Amorim, brought in to instill discipline and revive United fortunes. Previous managers had let players become more powerful and influential than themselves. Ruben was adamant that this was no longer going to be the case, especially with Man United laying off staff to save money, with players still on millions a month. The golden boy of Manchester United now faced the very real prospect of becoming a bit part player at the club that he once dreamed of representing since childhood. This sentiment amongst the United faithful was clear, with a staggering 78% of United fans in a social media poll supporting the idea of selling Rashford. Rashford's own social media presence, once a source of connection with fans, now became a battleground of harsh comments and abuse. The pressure of fans' expectations has broken many talented players before. 1 minute you're God's gift, the next a failure who needs to be sold. As the transfer window approached, whispers of a shocking £40 million price tag for Rashford began to circulate. Now his struggles on the pitch and off-field controversies had slashed that figure by more than half. The options before Rashford were clear. Staying at United meant battling for his place under the new manager in his disciplined regime. It was a chance to reclaim his status of Old Trafford's golden boy, but the pressure would be immense. Every touch, every missed chance would be scrutinised. On the other hand, a move away from Manchester offered the allure of a fresh start. Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich and even Arsenal had reportedly showed interest in acquiring the forward. A change of scenery could reignite his career, free from the weight of expectations at his boyhood club. But his hefty £325,000 per week salary complicated matters. Few clubs could match those wages, limiting his options massively. The emerging Saudi Pro League, flush with cash, loomed as a lucrative but controversial alternative. And with a number of articles all seeming to come out at once, the headline was there.
If there was a good offer, United would have talked about it, but there are no suitors.
Man saying he's got to learn Arabic, bro. It's time to learn Arabic.
Would he step up and fight and get his place back in the squad, prove that he wanted to be there, impress the new manager and make it known that he had taken the criticism on board? We now know that that wasn't the case.
Marcus Rashford has today been visiting his old school in Manchester, and he's been speaking about his Manchester United future. It feels like he might be ready for a new challenge.
It seemed like the chapter of his life in red was coming to a close, leaving every United supporter wondering what truly could have been, but also asking the question, was it their fault? Or did it all fall on the shoulders of a young man, pushed into the limelight too soon and incapable of handling the pressure, struggling to figure out what he should be using his newfound fame for? That was the rise and heartbreaking fall of Marcus Rashford.